의견을 접할 기회를 잃게 돼 더 끼리끼리 모이게 되고 사회 극단화가 심화될 수 있다고 투팩츠는 지적합니다.
The problem is, we no longer really understand how these complex algorithms work.
정치적 목적으로 악용돼 우리의 사고와 행동을 조종하고 있다고 해도 말이죠. 그렇다면 스스로 학습해 답을 내놓는 인공지능 알고리즘은 어떨까요? 입력된 데이터를 상상할 수 없는 방식으로 분석해 인공지능 알고리즘이 내놓는 확률적 답을 우리는 쉽게 객관적 정답이라고 착각합니다. 하지만 알고리즘의 설계 단계에는 필연적으로 설계자의 주관이 개입될 수밖에 없습니다. 이것이 JNF 투팩츠가 인공지능 시대의 기술 윤리와 책임을 강조하는 이유입니다.
We need a digital economy where our data and our attention is not for sale to the highest bidding authoritarian or demagogue.
브라보! 갑자기 JNF 투팩츠에게 묻고 싶은 게 많아졌다고요?
Social networks are broken. The internet made the world smaller. 이 문제를 해결하기 위해서 나선 한 남자. 미래대안적 플랫폼을 개발하고 제작해 대안을 제시하는 미디어 학자 이선 주커만.
If you look at online media consumption, in this case in the top 10 users of the internet, more than 95% of the news readership is on domestic news sites. So all of this starts leading me to think that we're in a state that I refer to as imaginary cosmopolitanism. You end up getting after a while is the wisdom of the flock. You end up flocking with a lot of people who are probably similar to you, who have similar interests, and it's very, very hard to get information from the other flocks.
소셜미디어 사용자의 시야를 넓히는 뉴 플랫폼, 고보의 개발자. 인터넷의 힘으로 세계의 국경 없는 이해를 돕는 국제 네트워크 프로젝트 글로벌 보이스의 공동 창립자. 이선 주커만, SDF2019 연사 내한 확정.
변화의 시작. 이게 정말 내 생각일까를 시작하겠습니다. 아직 입장하지 않으신 분들은 입장하여 착석해 주시기 바랍니다. 행사의 원활한 진행을 위해 동시 통역이 준비되어 있습니다. 한국어는 1번, 영어는 2번 채널을 통해 통역이 진행됩니다. 필요하신 분들께서는 이용하시기 바랍니다. 잠시 후 9시부터는 SBS에서 75분 동안 생방송으로 SBS D 포럼의 개막식이 생중계됩니다. 곧 생방송이 시작될 예정이오니 착석해 주시기를 부탁드립니다. SDF 2019의 모든 프로그램은 SBS SDF 2019 공식 사이트와 유튜브 SDF 채널에서 실시간으로 시청하실 수 있습니다. 고맙습니다. 다시 한번 내빈 여러분께 잠시 안내 말씀드립니다. 지금부터 생방송으로 SBS D 포럼 변화의 시작, 이게 정말 내 생각일까의 개막식이 생중계됩니다. 휴대전화는 꺼주시거나 진동으로 바꿔주시기 바랍니다. 행사의 원활한 진행을 위해 동시 통역이 준비되어 있습니다. 한국어는 1번, 영어는 2번 채널을 통해 통역이 진행됩니다. 필요하신 분께서는 이용하시기 바랍니다. 개막식과 함께 첫 번째 챕터, 다원화 사회, 갈등을 보다 역시 생방송으로 진행되오니 방송 종료 안내 멘트가 나올 때까지 자리에 계속 착석해 주시기 바랍니다. 고맙습니다.
네, 안녕하십니까. SBS 앵커 김현우입니다. SDF2019 변화의 시작. 이게 정말 내 생각일까? 개막식 생방송이 잠시 뒤에 시작됩니다. 원활한 진행을 위해서 저는 자리에 앉아주시면 대단히 고맙겠습니다.
SDF2019, I'd like to ask all of you to take your seats. We will soon begin the live broadcast of the SDF2019. We would like to ask that you turn off your mobile phones or turn them into silent mode so that we can proceed more smoothly. Thank you.
내빈 여러분께 안내 말씀드리겠습니다. 잠시 후 행사 시작을 위하여 장례 조입니다. 내빈
Ladies and gentlemen, we'll soon begin. Please take your seats. We will soon be turning the opening ceremony.
우리는 최근 깊어지는 갈등과 마주하고
We
있습니다.
witness everywhere conflicts
그 어느 때보다
that run deep.
다른 사람과의
Ironically, at
소통이
a
쉬운
time
세상임에도 불구하고
when
말이죠.
communication with others has never been easier.
지구 반대편에 있는 사람과 생각을 공유하는
We
것도
can even share
가능해진
ideas
요즘입니다.
with someone across the globe.
같은 세상에 살고 있지만
We live in the
다른
same
시선으로 바라볼
world,
때가 있습니다.
but sometimes we see things differently.
누군가는 초록빛으로,
Some see
누군가는
green
붉은빛으로 말입니다.
and others see red.
옳고 그름을 떠나
It's not a matter of who is right or wrong. If we don't learn to gaze in the same direction,
우리는 다름을
we fail to accept differences.
이제 작은 질문을 던져보자 합니다.
Now, time for a small question.
변화의 시작.
The beginning of change. I hope you can find the clue today.
네, 여러분 안녕하십니까?
Good morning. Welcome to SDF 2019, the beginning of change. Is that really what you think? I'm your host, Kim Hyun-woo, the anchor for the 8 o'clock news on SBS. Good morning. I am Choi Hae-rim. Last year, SBS merged its two global forums, Seoul Digital Forum and Future Korea Report, and launched the new SBS D Forum. We have been closely observing how the society is changing along with the technological development. This year marks the second D Forum, and throughout the year, we have been keen on the social conflict present in Korea as well as many parts of the world and tried to find out the cause and the solution. We have made academic approaches involving research and experiments to that end, and we also launched the official SDF online channel, Individuals Changing the World D, and ran special interviews and webtoons to invite participation from a broader audience. Today at the SDF 2019, you will be able to listen to the talks of distinguished speakers from both home and abroad, and you will also be able to participate directly in the Q&A sessions. It is time to invite our CEO, President Park Jong-hoon of SBS, to deliver his opening remark. Please welcome him with a big hand.
한국방송협회장을 맡고 있는
President Park of SBS, also the current chairman of Korean Broadcasters Association, firmly believes in a renewed role of the terrestrial broadcasting by emphasizing more its public nature. Today's D Forum is held to that vein. Please join me in welcoming President Park Jong-hoon.
여러분 안녕하십니까?
Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. First of all, I would like to extend my sincere gratitude to all of our guests and viewers for being with us for this year's SBSD Forum. After its initial beginning in 2004, this is the second year into SDF's second season. And the theme of SDF 2019 is the beginning of change. Is that really what you think? Conflicts and fights over different opinions is an age-old phenomenon. And this is not something that only the Korean society suffers alone. In fact, mankind's history itself is made up of acknowledging such differences and identifying ways of coexistence. However, what we are recently witnessing is indeed reaching levels of serious concern. Whether we are listening only to voices that we agree with, only to what we want to hear, and whether we are excluding all other ideas, these are the questions we should all be asking ourselves. Maybe we blindly accept a certain camp's logic to be my own belief, or maybe for reasons of efficiency, we are letting advanced technologies of AI and algorithms make decisions and judgments for us when we should be making them ourselves. It is time to ask ourselves, are these thoughts truly my own? What are the thoughts of those who have different views? If they are different from mine, just how different are they? Is there any way to resolve the disconnect and bring together our opinions? These are the questions I want to give you. Once again, I'd like to thank sincerely our speakers and participants, and now I officially declare the opening of SDF 2019.
네, 박정훈 SBS 사장이
Thank you very much. He officially opened SDF 2019, the beginning of change. Is that really what you think? And he also thanked all the participants. President Moon Jae-in of the Republic of Korea had delivered his message of congratulations earlier on, in which he mentions that hopefully today's SBSD forum will mark the beginning of everyone paying close attention to others whose ideas differ from their own. He asked the forum to continue to bring out in the open such problems our society is faced with. Please check the official SDF website and the booklet for the president's message. I regret to inform you, Speaker of the National Assembly, Mr. Moon Hee-sang, who was scheduled to deliver his remark in person, could not join us this morning because he has to attend the funeral mass for President Moon Jae-in's mother, who passed away. I would like to recognize the VIPs who have graced the opening ceremony of the SDF 2019 with their presence. We have with us Mr. Hwang Kyo-an, Chairman of the Liberty Korea Party, Mr. Son Hak-kyu, Leader of the Bareun Mirae Party, Mr. Chun Jung-bae, Member of the National Assembly, Seorun, Member of the Minju Party, Mr. Han Sang-hyuk, Chairman of Korea Communications Commission. Thank you. And now, we will watch a video introducing the theme of this year's SDF. We're witnessing an extreme form of power struggle. The one with the loudest voice messes things up, then people begin blaming one another. It starts a downward spiral. And we should stop. We should take a moment to look at what situation we're in and try to solve problems in a completely new way. We need to transform ourselves so that we're able to ask the important questions. that matter.
네, 올해 저희는 우리 사회에
This year, we will take a long, hard look at the conflicts in our society. In a nationwide phone survey of 1,000 Korean adults, 83.1% answered conflict in Korean society is significant, and 6 out of 10 anticipated the conflict to grow bigger. When asked about the visible signs of conflict, the answers included fighting amongst politicians, tragic accidents caused by conflict, protests and demonstrations, clashes of opinions online, etc. And respondents felt that it was not easy to talk about politics, especially with those who had different political opinions, and they felt only the extreme opinions were heard and moderate voices muted. 59.4% replied that they felt none of the political parties represented them, and 52.6% said they could not relate to any of the media outlets. And maybe that is why, when people try to acquire information about controversial issues, their choice of information source following the press was online community and YouTube. People cited as the main cause of social conflict the political culture forcing people to take sides, self-righteousness, and double-standard mentality. When asked who should work the hardest as the mediator, the top answers were the assembly, and as you can see, it is followed by the government and the press. Worth noting is the tendency to try to narrow the differences and meet in the middle when faced with a thorny issue instead of deciding by majority. More than half of the people in their 20s, 30s, and 40s were of this opinion. And to the question of what do we need most to resolve conflict, the top 3 answers were tolerance, change in the way we communicate, and a system to support that. With that in sight, this year's SDF will focus on the culture of respecting differences, changing ways of communication, and the system which will enable all this. As individuals, we may be easily swayed by politics, press, and technology. We have the right not to be manipulated and must be courageous enough to come face to face with ideas different from ours. We believe the magic question to set the change in motion is this really what I think? You're here with us, standing at the starting point of change, whether it be little changes you can make today or a sea change requiring global movement. SDF 2019 paid attention to the social conflict and confrontation visible in our world. For the past several months, we conducted joint research together with the experts and carried out socio-psychological experiment to do an in-depth analysis of the situation. We will now begin session 1, SDF 2019 Research Team Findings. I'd like to welcome to the stage Professor Lee Won-jae from KAIST Graduate School of Culture and Technology. Please welcome him with a big hand.
오늘 우리 사회는 갈등하고 있습니다.
Korean society is under conflict. Two opposing camps in a standoff in the streets. Well, we haven't witnessed such a situation in Korea in quite some time. Today, I would like to touch upon 4 points regarding the current social conflict we're experiencing in Korea. Why did the conflicts become so severe? Is this assumption even true? If so, why does it feel like conflicts have gotten more severe? And faced with such a situation, what should we be wary of and what should we be pursuing? There are 2 reasons behind this situation. First is democratic development in Korea. As freedom of expression of ideology and conscience grows, it is only natural that diverse opinions are voiced out at once. And this is bound to increase the possibility of differing opinions creating conflict. Secondly, for like-minded people, the technological platforms for them to easily communicate and gather have developed. If the internet was responsible for connecting people, then mobile technology has made people always connected. These always connected people are being mobilized faster and stronger than ever before. Under such conditions, the democratic nations of the 21st century are accustomed to such conflicts and confrontations between groups of different views. Let's look at a theory that explains such social conflict. James Hunter argues that the social conflicts in the U.S. have nothing to do with objective elements like class, race, or religion. Researchers focusing on far-right politics in the 21st century Western society view current developments such as British farmers supporting Brexit and lower-income white Trump supporters in the U.S. in the same light. That is, regardless of individuals' economic and social conditions, they are showing strong political preferences. Political scientists refer to this as post-materialism. This doesn't mean moving away from pursuit of material values to the pursuit of spiritual values. It means that regardless of realistic gains, individuals are pursuing a specific ideology. Examples in Korea would be that of the Gangnam left or the low-income class rightists. This shows the research result of people who pressed like on Facebook pages of 5 presidential candidates in 2017 and which Facebook pages these people were related to. Through network analysis, we found these Facebook pages can be categorized into 3 groups. The blue shows mostly progressive political figures and groups, while red represents conservative figures and groups. But what's interesting here is the yellow. Yellow represents Facebook pages of entertainment-related contents. We can note here is that online ideological conflicts are in line with entertainment area highlighted in yellow. So people who actively express their political opinions online are also actively voicing their opinions on entertainment issues, which gives weight to the theory that these conflicts are not based on an objective understanding of politics, but rather based on fandoms of particular political figures. This is much like fans of Tucson and LG baseball teams who don't have much conflicting social interests, but they simply oppose each other because of the teams that they are rooting for. So is it right to try to assess the Korean population's average political mindset just by looking at online conflicts and confrontations? To answer this, I'd like to turn to offline research results. Let's say there is social conflict regarding a particular issue. Then people's opinions will be divided into these 2 peaks. But if people's opinions are gathering to a particular side, then we will see a rise towards one side, one peak. However, we should remember that under a democratic system, whether it be a 2-peak or a single peak, the opinion should be widely spread and diverse. Through face-to-face interviews, sociologists have researched whether the Korean population is moving to bipolarization or gathering towards the middle. Since 2003, for the last 16 years, I've conducted analysis on the data of the Comprehensive Survey of Korean Society. As a barometer of political ideological conflicts in Korean society, we looked into people's positions on North Korea and their political dispositions. Because I believe this is the core issue for the conflicts we are seeing online and in the streets. This graph or this diagram shows the analysis on how you view North Korea, friendly or hostile. It's clear that the majority of opinions are centered in the middle, a single peak, meaning that the average position of Koreans are more moderate, in the middle, rather than radically opposed. Of course, relatively higher levels were visible for hardline positions from the conservatives versus softline positions from the progressives. But throughout the survey period, the tendency to concentrate in the middle became more and more visible, which means that there was never a real extreme bipolarization of opinions regarding North Korea. Regardless of administration in power for the last 16 years, Korean society's average political position has been moving more and more towards progressive tendencies. Also, centering in the middle, this single peak structure has been maintained. Let's look a little deeper into specific issues. The Moon administration's economic policies, specifically policies on minimum wage and regular workforce contracts for the political sector, were at the center of controversy recently. If you look at online or TV debates only, you might feel that people's opinions are very much separated into extremes. But as you can see, people's opinions on these policies actually are very distributed and centered on the middle. Even within the conservative LKP and the Minju Party supporters, we aren't seeing as much of a confrontation of two peaks, but rather a difference of two concentration areas created for each group's moderate center. So in reality, our society's confrontation is far less than it feels like. If so, why do we feel this way? Well, one explanation could be the characteristics of online confrontations. What you see on the left is the visualization of networks between political blogs during the 2004 U.S. presidential elections. Rada Amadik found that there was a clear bipolarization of blogs, Democrats or Republicans. On the right is the analysis we conducted at our KAIST lab of Twitter activities during the 2012 Korean presidential elections. As in the case of the U.S., depending on whether you support Park Geun-hye or criticize her, the Twitter account seemed bipolarized. So this kind of phenomenon is quite natural in the online world. The reason is that online users have a tendency not to express their own opinions, but rather first read the opinions of the other side and their own side, and then express an opinion that is favorable for their own camp. What is primarily important online is the recognition or the acknowledgement from my side or my friend. First and foremost, getting an agreement is important, and such social recognition comes from my side, my friend. And the clearer the content, the higher the possibility of receiving such acknowledgement. This is the reason behind the visible bipolarization on the internet. The second reason is the division of values each of us pursues. The horizontal axis shows how people evaluate the fairness in our society, while the vertical axis represents putting priority on individual freedom or collective rule. What is noticeable here is that the conservative position, of demanding the guarantee of individual freedom under the premise that the society is always fair, and the progressive position that demands strengthening of collective rule to guarantee social fairness under the premise that our society is basically unfair. These two trends are visible, and these opposing positions seem to represent the conflict groups that gathered recently in Gwanghwamun and Seochodong regarding the Minister of Justice appointment. However, I do not believe that those demonstrations took place because of conflicts between conservatives and progressives. If we take a note of the composition, actually 85% of Koreans, meaning a vast majority, believe that our society is unfair. These people who hold the U.S. flag and the Korean flag in hand, who seem to be supporters of individual freedom and capitalistic order, take up only 9%. Those who point out our society's lack of fairness, that is 85% of the population, is the same percentage of Koreans who were outraged at the influence peddling scandal of 2016 that led to the impeachment of President Park. It is also a similar figure to the percentage of the population who applauded the current administration pledge for equality, fairness, and social justice early in its term. 42% of people who agree to the values of justice and fairness are of the opinion that as long as you don't break the law and pursue your personal interest in a legal manner, it is not a problem, while 43% believe, even if it isn't illegal, passing on wealth to your children or tolerating actions linked to influencing your children's ability to enter a good university is unacceptable. The political elite who have direct interest in the appointment or the failure of Justice Minister, I believe that they wanted to avoid that essential issue. And the most effective way of doing so is to avoid the real reason and substitute it with the age-old conflict between conservatives and progressives, simply amplifying the effect. If that is the case, under such distorted environments, how would we be able to fundamentally resolve the conflict, and how can we, the political arena and society as a whole, accept and be receptive of the will of the Korean people? There are two decision-making processes that we as individuals conduct independently. One is the opinion poll and the other is voting. If we, as a nation, make important decisions by vote, as we do now, then a general opinion poll would be much more accurate in predicting the future compared to online polls. Because in offline opinion polls, people will make decisions independently, regardless of other people's opinions, just like they do when they are voting. As I already presented to you, if you look at the poll results from the last 16 years, the moderate groups have remained firm and they have even become more consolidated than before. Therefore, what we should be focusing on in order to predict our future and make important decisions isn't the bipolarized division and conflict we're bound to see in the online world, but the focus should be on the centrists who will have the final decision-making power, politically and socially. Voting is crucial in a democratic republic. Voting is a means to resolve superficial conflicts. The political elite who are positioned at both extremes are well aware of this. And as voting time draws near, the more reasonable ones will move themselves to the middle rather than trying to convert the moderates to the extremes. Adam Smith argues that the fairness in market transactions are made possible not due to the conscience of transacting parties, but because of a third-party fair observer. In the same context, the centrists of public opinion must act as the general will of the population and take on the role of serious observer. And to make sure that their agenda can be attained through the representative system of the government, we must focus our efforts. And for these serious observers to function properly, we must not lose faith in the Democratic Republic's representative system. I present before you two cases. For Thomas Hobbes, though, conflict was not essential. For Hobbes, conflict was no more than a logical mechanism to prove the inevitability of representative government. On the other hand, Carl Schmitt, conflict was absolute and couldn't be resolved through a representative system, so the only solution was to obliterate the others, the enemy. And during the years he served as the crown jurist of the Third Reich, this belief led to the tragedy of Nazi Germany. The first article of our Constitution defines the Republic of Korea as a democratic republic. This means that all authority emanates from the people, and civil servants operate the government on behalf of the people. The people's democratic commitments are to be reflected by vote. The general will of the people, based on the firm and strong centrists, should be reflected through this system of representative or parliamentary system, and as democracy matures, its functions and importance become strengthened. As we witness more conflicts in our streets and on our screens, we should look to those centrists, the serious observers, to find the direction forward. This is how we will abide by the principles of a democratic republic, and this is how we can escape from the superficial and habitual rut of social conflict. Thank you. Professor Lee just introduced to us how the social conflicts have not gone to bipolarization yet, and we should focus on the role to be played by these serious observers. If so, are there technologies that are being developed in order to have more empathy and more communication of opinions? I'd now like to introduce the next presenter, Professor Kim Joo-ho of KAIST.
Professor Kim Joo had given a preview of 별별 생각, which is an experimental online platform on which people share their opinions on social issues, and we'll be now seeing that 별별 생각. Please give a warm hand to Professor Kim Joo-ho. Good morning. In the previous presentation, we heard that bipolarization seems more pronounced than it actually is in the online context. As a computer scientist, I research the technology for empathy and communication. I'd like to show you what kind of impact that technology has on us and what we need to think about to develop a better technology. When you look at the services and apps online, it's to help the people share their opinions, and the examples include Facebook, Twitter, and comment windows on the news, online community bulletins, etc. You can empathize and communicate with others with likes and thumbs up, or it could lead to conflict and confrontation because of distribution of fake news and character assassination. And because of this, Kakao Portal Service banned web comments on entertainment news to stem defamation. Then can there be genuine empathy and communication in online space? Let us look at it from a developer's perspective, not from a user perspective. Creating SNS and online community is actually designing social interaction between the users. And in order to design the social interactions, we have to think about how we relate with others. And there is a human tendency, and the saying goes, birds of a feather flock together. And if you think about your friends, people who you hang out with most, they're probably your age, your gender, you share similar political inclinations and values, and probably have similar jobs. So to design successfully the social interaction, the online services reflect this tendency of like-minded people liking each other. Let's look at some of the objectives of the technologies. One, grouping is made easier with these technologies. Think of the online community. It seems like a physical space or an organization which has distinct identity and culture. So like-minded people group together, and it creates sort of an exclusive space, and it brings up this sense of belonging. And it makes it easier to help the people find the people who share similar taste. So with the keyword, you can search the community that you want and you can join. And Facebook recommends other people who you might want to be friends with. And there's the recommendation engine, and it shows me what I probably want to see. So there are the customized research results on the very top, and YouTube pushes out these irresistible videos that I will probably want to see. So this is very smart technology, a great vision. But does it have problems? The biggest problem is it only lets us communicate with the like-minded people, and we only see the similar things. So we have access to unbalanced information and communication. And this leads to trapping us in our thoughts, and we are shut off in our little world. And second problem is we become hostile and antagonistic to others, and we oversimplify the other party, thinking that they're all the same. There's this out-group homogeneity. There's a perception that out-group members are more similar to one another than the in-group members. I'm a man, so I plead guilty. There are sometimes assumptions that I make. Women are women. And sometimes the progressives think that other people are all conservatives. So as a result, the bipolarization is more pronounced in the online space than in the actual space. So conveniently, I see only what I see, and I meet only the people I want, and that could backfire. And this could be amplified with the technology. So to use the analogy of food, let's say I like meat, and I am fed meat for 3 meals a day, and I am brainwashed into thinking that food other than meat is bad for my health. Then how can we solve this problem? We observed this issue and we came up with experimental online application which is called 별별 생각. And our slogan is a place where different ideas shine brightly. I know this pun doesn't work in English, but 별 means star, and it also means this and that thought. So we named the platform 별별 생각. The research team, along with the SDF team, gave a sneak preview of this application for the last 3 weeks, and to date, 1,200 people visited and left us comments. And in the 별별 생각 platform, you can share your opinions about issues, and you can also view what others think about the same issue. Let's pretend there is a user who uses the name Kim-byul. She's in her 20s. She's moderate, progressive. She's in her senior year in college, and she's getting ready to work. And as to extending the retirement age by 5 years, she's strongly against it because she's worried that it will take the jobs away from the youth. And so the members of the audience, what do you think about extending the retirement age? Strongly against it, neutral, for, or very much in favor. So what is your opinion and why do you think that? Ms. Kim-byul comes into the 별별 생각. She shares her opinions about other issues like game addiction, autonomous private high schools in Korea, and then she enters her information about what age she is, her gender, her occupation, and lastly, her political inclination. And after she enters the information, then people's opinions are plotted like stars in the night sky. And you're now looking at the star chart, which shows 800 people's opinions, and 1 star stands for 1 person's opinion about the retirement age. And now I will show you the screen of 별별 생각. In order to find out how people feel generally about a certain issue, there's a scale of strongly disagree to strongly agree. And you can see where the distribution is. And for the retirement age extension, more people were in agreement, but we see a scattered plot. Ms. Kim-byul is highlighted in red, so she can find out where her opinion is positioned. And you can click on other individual opinions and their reasons of why they're against or for it. We have to get ready for aging society, or we need to reserve the jobs for the youth, etc. And also you can organize this in a table format. And depending on the separate criteria, you can find out the distribution of opinions. So if we look at it by age group, in her 20s, 30s, and 40s, we see that the older that they get, there are more people in agreement of extending the retirement age. But as you can see, it's not drastically divided. And even within the same age group, we have a scattered distribution. Ms. Kim-byul is in her 20s. She's moderate progressive. She's a university student. And let's look at some of the more specific cases. And there are other women in her 20s and with the same political tendencies, and they may think differently from Kim-byul. Because of longer life expectancy and getting prepared for the aging society, they may be more in agreement with extending retirement age. And what about others who feel the same way with Kim-byul? We see that they're not all in her age group or gender or political tendencies. So we can look at it from a diverse perspective. She is a senior year in university, so she's thinking about getting a job, but then she gets to think about her parents who's nearing their retirement age. So looking at others' opinions, she can modify her original opinion. And within one issue, we have these complex scatter plots. And for each issue, we get more complex star charts. And for every issue, our opinions may become more complex. And we feel that reform of the prosecutor's office will have the society divided, but it's more evenly spread out than we thought. So there are many serious observers, and maybe we're just listening to the extreme voices. This was just a simple experiment. And through this, we realized how complex we are, how complex others are, and how complex the combination of mine and others' ideas are. So it's like looking at the stars at night, and we become humble, and we look at the complex opinions other people have, and we are surprised at the diversity and the complexity. So we should move away from this black and white dichotomy in which everyone who thinks the same as me is right and others are wrong. Of course, these applications are made with a good intent, but with a different intention, if you develop the technology, it could be a totally different application. We have this list up of recommended opinions in 별별 생각. And if we turn on this function, then the different opinions from mine are listed first. So this is to help me listen more carefully to people's opinions that are different from mine. And what is behind this is computer algorithm. The definition of algorithm is a series of tasks performed by the computer to solve problems. And the algorithm is solving the problem of showing the user diverse opinions. So it selects the different opinions first and shows that at the top. So there is the recommendation function in 별별 생각, and online services including Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and Naver, they also use algorithm. So what to show, what not to show, and what to show first. That is determined by algorithm, and it also filters any types of profanity, obscenity, insults, and false information. So algorithm acts as a filter and screens what information to give and what not to give. So depending on how the algorithm shows us the world, our thinking may be affected. In 별별 생각, the algorithm determines which star to show and which star to shine more brightly. What if the algorithm just shows the stars that have similar opinions as me, or it just shows the stars with opposite opinions from me? And what if it shows mixed opinions? And what does mixed mean in this context? And who can define this, and how can they define it, and how can this be reflected in algorithm? And what is the right approach to show this much data? There is an AI technology that enables automatic object detection in photographs, and so this helped photo search. But there was this issue of the computer recognizing Africans as gorillas, but this didn't happen to Caucasians. According to case study in 2015, if you do the image search on Google for occupations like CEOs and telemarketers, it shows the bias that we have about specific gender and specific occupations. So the results are more skewed than what is actual. And the algorithm contains the designer's the intent. The YouTube and Facebook services have the algorithm to keep the users online longer so that they consume more content. So they recommend the contents that we probably want to see. algorithm is computer driven, so we may think that it's objective and neutral. But as we saw, algorithm is made by man, and it could contain the prejudice, bias, stereotypes, and the intention of the developer. Algorithm is everywhere, so it affects what we see, what we come across, and how we communicate and how we think. Of course, many algorithms have been designed to enhance convenience with a very good intent. But as a user, we need to be very picky about algorithm. So we need to have a full understanding of algorithm, and we need to be critical of algorithm. So the training shouldn't just be focused on coding, how to design and make codes. There should be more in-depth training about how algorithm can affect our communication. And we need to understand the bias and risk of distortion within algorithm so that we can make better algorithm. And as a user, we have the right to ask for a sound and robust algorithm. Today, I talked about the technology that enables empathy and communication. And the technology and algorithm have contributed greatly to empathy and communication, but depending on how that is made, it could be a blessing or it could be a poison. And I showed you the application 별별 생각, and we wanted to share this message of what it means to be different. So we shouldn't take sides. We're just stars shining in the night sky, and we have different thoughts. So we have this tendency to want to mingle with the people who are like-minded, and the technology has the potential to amplify this. But people who I thought was different is really similar to me, and people who I thought was similar to me may be completely different from me. So we shouldn't take sides, and if somebody thinks differently, I just think that he's the enemy, but that comes from a deep misunderstanding. And it's because we only see one side. We are very complex. And because of this complexity, we may look the same, but we are all different. And complexity and difference can be a benefit. Because we're different, it could be more interesting and fun, and it opens new possibilities for more empathy and communication. And we need to demand the technology that accentuates the difference and be able to make that technology. What are the conditions for accepting differences and widen the breadth of empathy and communication in our daily life? Dean of Seogang University, Ms. Naeun Young of Media Arts and Science will now come up to the stage. Thank you.
반갑습니다.
Good morning, everyone. Today, we are seeking ways to overcome conflicts and live together as people of different opinions. I would like to look at how we can increase our understanding of each other so we can communicate with one another with more empathy. Recently, with developments of new media, we see an increase of non-face-to-face communication channels. Nowadays, in terms of coming into contact with other people's opinions, the main channel seems to be less face-to-face, but more through the screens of our computers or our mobile phones. Human beings are innately self-centered and often make errors in judgment. And with the rise of new media, increasingly, we tend to make even more wrong perceptions about other people's opinions. Please take a look at this table. Even when we are perceiving other people's opinions in face-to-face conversations, we tend to interpret the information in our favor. But in conversations through media, this tendency becomes heightened as the message is often oversimplified. Another limitation of media-based opinion is that it is far from being a one-person, one-voice situation. Often we hear a particular voice louder and more often, while some voices are never heard at all. In face-to-face situations, when opinions are being expressed through the use of non-verbal clues such as facial expressions, the overall mood of conversation can be more at ease, and we can listen and at the same time give some feedback like nodding to say, "I'm listening." But in the case of non-face-to-face communication on media, since we can only see the opinion itself, the expressions may become more aggressive, and in some cases, feedback can be given in a very harsh manner without any consideration. Our research team conducted some experiments on the opinion perception conditions for non-face-to-face and face-to-face communication. The first experiment was conducted to confirm our hypothesis that when we see only the opinion and not the person behind it, we make assumptions in which our prejudices are more involved than we might imagine. Our research team created a non-face-to-face environment where participants were exposed to other people's opinions, and then they were asked to guess who would have made such a statement. Let's take a look at the video of experiment 1. People in their 20s to their 60s, 12 people of different age, sex, occupation, political propensity were asked, guess who expressed this opinion. The first opinion, portrait rights for children. Even if they are young, portrait rights should be protected for children. In previous generations, people might have said, well, I'm the adult, but things have changed. Opinion 2, 52-hour work week adoption. We used to work on Saturdays until 5:30 p.m., and if there was a lot of work, we would work on Sundays too. That kind of commitment was what made Korea's economy develop. Survey participants each thought hard, and then they guessed who that opinion would be from. You said that all 3 opinions were probably by subject number 5. Why? Well, for the first opinion, I thought maybe it would be a female participant, but looking at subject number 5, he looks a little opinionated. So who was the real owner of this opinion? I think you'll find the result quite surprising. It was actually subject number 8. But we can see that subject number 8 was not selected by anyone. Matching accuracy was 0%. I think someone mentioned this earlier, that it seems like the opinion of someone older, since the older people work longer hours, they probably feel this way, but actually there was no need to view people with prejudice. But that's how people viewed me. As you can see, most of us are not free from our own prejudices, and it is very hard to identify correctly whose opinion we are looking at. Nevertheless, there are countless nameless opinions on the internet. And there are many radicalized deductions or inferences online that are based on these anonymous opinions. Our second experiment was conducted for 12 teams of 2 participants each, all of different ages and sexes, and the pairs were asked to debate on a specific issue with opposing views. Now, half of them, that is 6 teams, were asked to have some opening free discussions for about 5 minutes before the debate, while the other 6 pairs went straight into the debate with opposing views without any prior conversations. I will show you the clips. The teams with no prior conversations. And the issue is related to how do you feel about lowering the legal voting age to 18? Well, if we were to lower the voting age to 18 years, that would mean high school seniors would be eligible to vote. And in my opinion, they should be focusing more on studying and college entrance exams. So I don't think that this is a very good idea, because they will probably be very busy and centered and concentrating on college entrance. Well, I agree that in our parents' generation, you would think that at the age of 18 that you should be studying and shouldn't be so involved in politics. My parents' generation are of that opinion, and many people who are older will think that way. But I think that it would be a good idea to give them voting rights. We see that these two people have different opinions, and because they were thrown into the debate without any personal dialogue to get to know each other, we see that they don't make eye contact when speaking, and when they do sometimes, but they are more focused on composing their own thoughts and logic, so it's not a conversation or discussion based on empathy. They're both trying to structure their own logic of statements. So because we asked these participants to start debating on the issue right away without any personal conversation first, they both seem very uneasy and tense. Now let's look at the other case where they were given some time in advance for some casual conversation before going into the debate. Some open discussion topics. For example, food. Did you have breakfast today? Yes, I usually eat breakfast. And from my childhood, I never skipped breakfast, so I've become quite used to eating breakfast. It's really important to have good, healthy habits. And now they go into the debate on this particular issue. What is your view about extending the retirement age by 5 years? After retirement, we're still quite healthy and young physically. There are many people who just wander around without anything to do. So I think it would be good to start retirement later, incrementally extend the age. Well, in my opinion, the problem of unemployment, especially for younger people, well, there are many of them without jobs. So if retirement age goes up, then those people will keep working at their jobs. But if we could reduce their position just a little bit to give more opportunities to the youth, wouldn't that be better? But in my opinion, I don't think making them retire early is going to necessarily create more jobs for younger people. I still think it's better to raise the retirement age to 65. So although these two people have different opinions, they are both at ease, having a conversation with each other. This is why face-to-face conversation, even with different opinions, we can actually be much more relaxed and much more empathetic in terms of the communication method, and we can find more common ground. I'm sure all of you felt this, that even if you're of different generations or different sex or have different views, in face-to-face situations and after having some personal conversation, it's much easier to listen to the other person's opinion, as well as expressing my own opinion. These participants were not experts. They were ordinary people that we can run into every day. But they all had different views and ideas based on different backgrounds and bases. But especially in the case of having had some personal conversation ahead of time, we see that they were able to have a more smooth dialogue, a more mutual understanding, and empathic conversations.
인정해주는 영역이 넓어진다고 말씀드릴 수 있겠습니다.
So with different opinions, you could still respect others. Human interaction can be natural, but it can be jeopardized in non-face-to-face communication and can lead to wrong inferences about the other party. Last year, Professor Catalina Toma of University of Wisconsin-Madison published a paper last year about how people's beliefs about deception in text-based media are based on biases. People believe themselves to be more honest and altruistic than their peers and others to be more deceptive and selfish. And the bias was strengthened in a non-face-to-face context for the lack of nonverbal cues. Although media was developed to help communication, and if that media is hindering empathy and communication, then it defeats the whole purpose. Conflict in society is driven by polarization of views. The opinions may actually be different, but it may be due to the wrong perception of how others think and feel. And this could be due to the opinion illusion. According to a socio-psychological study, even without media intervention, when like-minded people continue to talk with each other, their opinions grow in the same direction and grows much stronger. That's because they had their own reasons behind the belief to begin with, and by listening to others' rationale, their belief is strengthened all the more. And this is the persuasive arguments theory. And within the in-group, people have similar thoughts, and the person who voices his or her opinion loudest appears to be the leader of the group, and people tend to follow the thinking of that leader. And this is social comparison theory. It's very common to see people who share similarities talk with each other more often. Because as human beings, we pursue cognitive consistency, we feel more at ease by talking to people with similar opinions. And one thing to watch out for is, in a situation when you're surrounded by same opinions, you don't take the time to think about alternatives, and the same ideas as others are reinforced. Let's assume the in-group I am a member of gains stronger identity, when there's growing conflict between countries or between political parties, even if the actual opinion gap is only 4 points, Group A is at -2 and Group B is at +2 of the scale, Group A is mistaken into thinking that their opinions are more on the extreme and they perceive that they're at -3. And the same thing goes for Group B. So, the perceived gap is now 6. And this is much greater than the actual gap. Because of this opinion illusion, people gain a wrong perception of their in-group's average thinking, assimilates himself to thinking he also belongs to the more extreme side. And these forces pull the group toward each extreme end away from each other. And even if it's an individual opinion, if it's perceived as a group opinion, then there's a higher chance of its growing more radical. And this is the social identity theory. Maybe if we don't wrongly perceive the opinion gap to be so wide and see it the way it is, then because it is not so big of a gap, we could take the courage to try to narrow the gap. And the polarization, because of opinion illusion, could be aggravated by the media. Now, the president of Duke University, Professor Vincent Price, had conducted a study back in Stanford days, and he put up a headline of liberal arts and natural sciences students clashing over curriculum. And there was another headline shown that was written in a more neutral tone. And as a result, under the condition of having seen a more controversial headline, there was a huge opinion gap that grew farther apart between the liberal arts students and the natural sciences students. And it didn't happen in the other scenario. So what is important here is, yes, people have different opinions, and we do respect that. But if it grows as social identity, or if it's emphasized too much in the media, then it could seem much bigger than it actually is. And if the opinion gap seems too big, then you don't have the courage to try to communicate, and negative feelings toward each other can only be aggravated. And to reduce this opinion illusion, we should try to get out of the comfort zone surrounded by just similar opinions and make the effort to try to listen to different opinions. But regrettably, the current media system traps us inside our similar thoughts. That is the tendency. Including social media, the digital media system just shows us and recommends what we like to see. And we don't filter it ourselves. The media filters it for us previously. So we call this filter bubble. So, however unsettling it may be, we should make the effort to try to find out things that I am not comfortable with. Otherwise, I'll be listening to the same echoes over and over, and I'll be locked up in this echo chamber. And one last thing I want to say is, because the extreme opinions are very intense, they're expressed more in the media and they're heard more and they could be exaggerated. And on the other hand, the serious observers take up the majority and they are of the moderate opinion, but they're not heard enough. So their opinions are not taken seriously. So for those of you who want to be a rational thinker and want the society to go in the right direction, let all the thoughts shine in the night sky. We should not be immersed in the world that the media just shows us. We should get out of this opinion illusion. We should have more face-to-face talk with other people. Only then can we overcome the illusion and misperception and can empathize and communicate with others. We should continue to talk in a way that does not aggravate the confrontation. And this will be the shortcut to going to harmonization in our society. Thank you very much.
네, 지금까지
So far, we have listened to all of the presentations for Chapter 1 of SDF 2019. So throughout the day, we are going to listen to distinguished speakers and presenters deal with the issue of conflict and confrontation in our society today. We would like to ask you to continue to share your time with us. Yes, in session 2, we'll go on to the Courageous Lawmakers session, and you can also view the contents not only on the SBS channel, but also for SBS News, SDF homepage, and the YouTube account of SDF. Thank you very much. This concludes the live broadcasting portion of the opening ceremony of SDF 2019. Thank you very much for your participation.
가라고 스테이 하라 그랬지.
하고 있습니다.
앞에서 볼 때는 오네오 화면이 없어요.
내빈 여러분께 안내 말씀드립니다. SBS D 포럼 SDF2019의 개막식 생방송이
The live broadcast of the opening ceremony has just ended. We are going to take a break. It's going to be a 15-minute break, and after that, we are going to have session 2, the Courageous Lawmakers, working to restore political dialogue. And also, we have Chapter 2, The Right to Live Free from Manipulation, with Dr. Zeynep Tufekci. All the programs can be viewed through SDF channel YouTube and also the official website live. We will be back at 10:30. Thank you.
사람들은 기본적으로 인지적 일관성을 유지하고 싶어 하기 때문에 이런 현상이 발생하는 거죠. 자신의 원래 생각과 다른 생각을 받아들이는 것은 마음을 불편하게 하기 때문입니다. 이와 같은 확증 편향은 현실 속에 잘못된 부분이 있어도 이를 합리화할 수 있는 근거만 찾으려 할 뿐 잘못된 부분을 시정하려 하지 않기 때문에 주의해야 할 필요가 있습니다.
억울하다고 느낄 때도 많고
특히 중소년들은 억울해요. 왜냐면 뭘 여태까지 해보지도 않았는데
정말 하나부터 열까지 다 나쁘게만 보일 텐데
지들끼리 밥그릇 싸움 한다고 이렇게 보신 거거든요.
내빈 여러분께 잠시 안내 말씀드립니다. SDF 2019의 두 번째 세션 용감한 의원들 대화를 찾아서가
Ladies and gentlemen, the second session of SDF 2019 will soon begin. I'd like to ask you all to come back into the room and take your seats. After the closing of the second session, we'll go straight into the third session without any breaks. So please remain seated after the end of the second session. We also ask that you kindly make use of the simultaneous interpretation receivers if you need. We have Korean provided on channel 1 and English provided on channel 2. Thank you very much.
내빈 여러분께 잠시 안내 말씀드립니다. SDF 2019의 두 번째 세션 용감한
A second session of SDF 2019. The courageous lawmakers will begin shortly. Please come inside and take your seats. There will be no break between session 2 and session 3. After session 2, Dr. Zeynep Tufekci's talk will continue right away. So please remain seated after the end of session 2. We are providing simultaneous interpretation. Please tune into channel 1 for Korean and channel 2 for English. Please make use of the services if needed. Thank you. Always fighting a turf war, waste of taxpayers' money. Rude comments. What does it mean to be elected to the National Assembly? It was a great honor. The residents in my constituency supporting me all the way. I promised myself I will never let them down. I was an urban planning researcher for 20 years. I wondered, is what I am doing helping the real people? There must be so many who are not benefiting from the policies. I wanted to do something meaningful for the whole society, and I felt that politics was the right platform to do just that. At the National Assembly, you need to be able to negotiate and have patience. People have different values and beliefs. It may slow things down, but we need to respect differences. That is what democracy is, and I am learning a lot. In my early days as a National Assemblywoman, I came home always depressed. The social barrier seemed insurmountable. There were so many people who were in despair and who needed help. With the powers vested in me for 4 years, I need to put in place policies and take action that help the people. That we're always fighting with each other is valid criticism. We need to show bipartisan cooperation. We're doing our best, but our best may not be good enough. I think it is important that we talk through all possible means.
네, SDF2019 변화의 시작. 이게 정말 내 생각일까? 두 번째 세션.
This is the second session of SDF 2019. And now I'd like to ask the 4 lawmakers you saw on the video on stage for our discussion session. Please welcome them with a warm round of applause.
네, 이번 세션은
So this session is entitled The Courageous Lawmakers Working to Restore Political Dialogue. And we have our 4 courageous lawmakers here with us. I'd like to ask you all to introduce yourselves. Good morning. I'm working day and night from the Minju Party to make the policies of the Moon administration a successful one in the Korean society. My name is Kim Tae-seop. Lawmaker Kim Tae-seop's speech is so tremendous. I'm having a hard time recovering after that. I'm from the Liberty Korea Party. I do not have a region that I represent as of yet. But despite that fact, I would like to represent all citizens of the Republic of Korea in order to create policies that are valid for the nation. Thank you very much. My name is Kim Hyuna. Oh my goodness, it's like a rally here. Well, he started it. Yes, Mr. Chi, please go ahead. Can I stand up? Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. DDP and the location around it. I represent this district. My name is Ji Sang-wook. I'm from 바른미래 Party, which pursues a bright future for the future. And as was mentioned by lawmaker Kim, we will be applauding all the good things and actions that the Moon administration conducts, but at the same time provide harsh criticism when it goes in the wrong direction. So thank you very much for inviting me. I hope that this will be a wonderful session. Yes, lawmaker Lee Jung-mi. Yes, good morning. I'm from Justice Party. Our party pursues to provide a just society so that no one is discriminated. I'm living in Songdo of Incheon City. It's a pleasure to meet you all here today. Thank you very much. Here today at the SDF 2019, we are looking into the situation of social conflict and confrontation and trying to find solutions to the current situation. When I mentioned the title and I was thinking about who to include in the session, many people said, well, you have to have politicians on stage because politics means conflicts, right? What do you feel about this type of opinion? Well, I think it is quite relevant and true. I am included in the legislative committee within the National Assembly, and there's a lot of fighting there. There may be some loud fighting, but at the same time, we do also have some discussions and planning about who's going to take the next turn in making our party's statements strongly. So I think that this is something that is quite disappointing for many Koreans, so we would have to resolve this in the future. What is your opinion? Well, of course, there may be some disappointment that Koreans feel, but at the same time, for many social issues, there is a need for some conflicts, some need to voice out your own arguments in order to make it be heard. Of course, it is unfortunate to see that it is not the conflict itself in the National Assembly, but as a result of that, what agreement, what consensus have we found? What way forward have we forged? The results are not being highlighted, and that in itself is a bit unfortunate, I believe. However, compared to the past, in terms of what methodology of fighting that we are adopting, I think it is changing little bit by little bit. In some cases, the criticism that the Korean people give actually helps us to change. And I think that politicians are chameleons. So how you criticize us, how you applaud us really allows us to change. So I hope that you will be more active and more involved so that you can make this current situation be more resolved in the future. This current National Assembly, everyone says that it is the worst in history so far. They have been shouting at each other, fighting with each other, and that image has been very much strongly engraved in our minds. But in order to give valid, correct criticism, I would like to ask you to explain to us if the circumstances at the National Assembly are such that fighting is inevitable. So we want to hear your opinions. What do lawmakers really think of this? Whether it be fighting over policies or other types of opinions that you have. I ask that you don't fight here, but at least talk about what ways forward we can think about. There are about 300 lawmakers in the National Assembly. You may wonder why I chose these 4 to be on stage with us today. Well, when I asked people who I should be asking, I asked all the former and current national politics reporters, and they highlighted that these 4 people are the ones who can speak very frankly and give us a broad idea of what is going on really at the National Assembly. So I hope that we'll have a very good and fruitful discussion. I hope the applause is a bit louder at the end of the session. So we had a lot of recommendations for these 4 lawmakers, and I ask all 4 lawmakers to be very courageous, honest, profound, and yet entertaining. I know that it's early in the morning, and we have been talking quite a bit about very serious matters, but I hope that you will have a very good, entertaining, fun, productive session. I hope you can participate in that manner. Thank you very much. Mr. Chi and Ms. Lee, I hope that you will be able to discuss everything that you want to discuss. Yes, I will do my best to be frank and be courageous. There are many opportunities that are open to the audience as well to participate, and I will explain that later on. For all 4 lawmakers, I would like to start off with my first question about the criticism about lawmakers, why you feel that it may be a little unfair of a judgment? Well, I don't think that I can say that it is unfair. It is true that we were not able to show images of what we are doing that are actually well received by the population. I think in each of our lives, we see those types of conflicts occurring as well. I put a lot of emphasis on relationships, and I tend to be a very candid person. And I believe that if the relationship is honest, then the politics will develop. And if we cooperate in a candid manner, then I believe that the economy can progress. But that is not the situation right now, and that's why we are having these difficulties politically and economically. The images that you see of us fighting, there are different identities that each party has. And each of you probably have your own affiliations depending on what identity you individually have. So those differences may arise in these types of fights, but behind it all, we all respect each other. We all deal with each other with respect. There may be some cases where things seem very harsh, but that even in itself is going to get more and more improved, I think, in the future. Lawmaker Lee, when you meet with citizens, when they say, why aren't lawmakers working? Why are they fighting? Do you feel frustration? Yes, when I talk to elderly people, what they tell us often is, stop fighting. Would you please stop fighting? I think in some cases we should be scolded, but at the same time, I would like to ask people to focus on why it is that we are fighting. Let's say for environmental issues, there may be environmentalists and also people on the other side of the spectrum. But we have to make these issues more public in order to discuss them in public and find the road forward. So if the National Assembly is not fighting, I think that in itself is not right. Of course, how we fight may be a little bit of a problem right now. But these are things that we cannot do on a private level. We have to publicize these issues to deal with them, to find solution to them, and try to keep a focus on who is it that's fighting for me. I'd like to ask the people to view it from that perspective. Yes, in a more dignified manner, ways of resolving issues in that manner. I think in that case, Koreans would not be so critical about lawmakers in the future. Lawmaker Kim Tae-sup, your supporters, your existing supporters, are you receiving some criticism from them? What is the current situation like for you? Well, of course, if I say something that is not directly in line with the party's policy directions, then I do get some criticism, whether it be on a personal level. Some people actually text me or call me. But if I do actually talk to them on the phone, then that is actually a very good, constructive conversation. But in very unilateral messages that come through text or on the internet, some cases they may be very aggressive and harsh. But if I respond to them, then actually the response coming back is much warmer. So lawmaker Lee Jang-mi already mentioned this, that when there is a need to fight, then we do have to fight. Lawmaker Kim Hyuna and myself, we definitely have opposing views, so we may be in arguments. But one thing that I have come to realize in my committee activities, in the legislation committee is that it has to be respectful and dignified. We should not be cursing at each other. And I really feel that this is something that I strongly believe in and that we should all be believing in. If somebody from the opposing party receives a lot of criticism on text, what are we trying to do to make sure that that doesn't happen? And I think that there are more things that we should be doing in order to achieve these types of improvements. Lawmakers are very good speakers, so I think that we can expect some more good arguments to come out from these four lawmakers. In order to make this more relaxed, so that you can all project your views and say what is on your minds, we'd like to start off with a small game section. It's going to be a true-false quiz section.
자, 준비되셨죠? 그럼 바로
So you're ready, right? Here goes the first question. Honestly speaking, I see another politician and think to myself, is that person for real? Yes or no? Lawmaker G, please make sure that you have the correct picket. I feel that toward the person in my party as well as other party. Well, it was just, so does that include somebody in this panel? I refuse to comment. Okay, moving on to the second question. Even within my party, so I'm not just talking about other parties, there are at least 3 lawmakers in my party that I feel I cannot talk to. If I raise true, then our party will go out of business. We only have 6 people in our party, so you should be very careful with your answer. So there are at least 3 people or more that I cannot talk to in my party. Okay, so we have lawmaker Kim who said yes. Who is it? You should be frank. No, you shouldn't pick on me. I have to survive in my party. Well, if you speak out, then you will become courageous. You don't have to talk about their names. You can talk about their tendencies and profiles. So it's not that I cannot really talk to them. I am struck sometimes, oh, so they think differently from me. So to give you an example, a few days ago, there was a talk about the Lord of the Rings, and he said that we should melt the ring in a volcano. And somebody said, what is Lord of the Rings and what is the ring? So we couldn't empathize. And after Lee Young-won was appointed as head of the party, and lawmaker Na Kyung-won said, okay, so I'm a lawmaker who is pretty and who buys lunch. And I was also struck because of the gender stereotypes. So depending on where we live, we come across a wide spectrum of different cultures, and it may be very small, but if we don't understand the little differences that come from our background, then it leads to misunderstandings. So when there's something like that, I explain, I whisper, that was a very famous movie, or that was a really famous TV drama. Okay, so I was the only one that said yes. So other parties, you have everyone that you can talk to. Well, I shouldn't name names. I will just say we, plural. As a lawmaker from early in the morning till late at night, there were a lot of misunderstandings, and we only get criticism although we work really hard. So following up on that, I sometimes feel that the people are too harsh on us. Lawmaker Kim, you just accept people's criticism? Yes. I don't think they're harsh at all. I rely on your support, and I look forward to the next election. So what about the others? Yes, I feel that the people are too harsh on us. Lawmaker Lee, Yes, I think people are too harsh thinking that 360 lawmakers are all the same because there are differences among the lawmakers. There are people who work harder than others. I feel lonely. I think lawmaker G is a lot lonely. Well, my children are critical of me because I don't spend time with my family. And then my constituents say that I don't take care of them enough. Well, I am doing all I can in my town. I am. Yes, you should not talk about your constituency. Yes, can I say something? I work hard during the day, and at night, before I go to sleep, I look at the Facebook and SNS, and I am really hurt. But then the next morning, when I wake up, I am refreshed, and I think to myself, okay, it's understandable that people feel that way. So that's why I raised it half and half. Depending on what time of day it is, what day of the week it is, I sometimes feel that people are too harsh or I deserve it. Okay, thank you. Moving on to question 4. Although we seem to quarrel every day, we are closer than what people think. Yes or no? Lawmaker Kim, you also raised the flag of not O or an X. Yes, you should make the distinction. People do the handshake. They smile on the outside, but inside they may hate each other. And at the same time, on the surface, they may not look friendly to each other, but inside they are friendlier. So sometimes when I have a quarrel, after that, I don't want to shake hands with the other party. But, sometimes I have to shake hands, and that kind of picture is taken, and I see on the newspaper that I am not smiling when I am doing the handshake. So if you're in the same committee, or if you have meals together, or if you go on business trip together, then you get closer. And what about you, Lawmaker Lee? People feel that, lawmakers are hypocrites. How can they quarrel and then turn around and shake hands and have lunch together? Well, think of it this way. If you go to a university together for 4 years, even if you're friends, you can fight. And although you're not that friendly, sometimes you get to talk, and sometimes you get to have meals together. So you shouldn't just look at the symptoms. I tend to try to find out why that lawmaker is reacting in this way, so that I can get the best outcome from any kind of interaction that I have. And if we fight every day for 4 years, then the stress level will go up. The legislative committee, I think, is very militant. It seems like you fight like it's the last day. Well, I don't know how the others feel about this. Lawmaker Lee talked about how we go to school together for 4 years. When we fight in the National Assembly, sometimes, I feel to myself, I don't want to talk to that person ever again. He lives in a totally different world. But I raised true, not false. Because if I said, we are not as close that we think, then that will be the end of the dialogue. Although sometimes I don't respect certain lawmakers, I still say respectful lawmaker so and so. So I may not feel that way, but I say it so that I can make a mental note of myself and I can learn to respect lawmakers. But so for your reference, sometimes what I sometimes I say things that I don't mean, and I mean things that I don't say. But if we are offended and even if we fight, we still say respectable lawmaker who so and so. Yes, I was also contested through SNS. Why do you use such expressions, respectable lawmaker who and who? So is that like your own league? Let's say respectable lawmaker Kim Tae-seop said something that shows that I respect lawmaker Kim Tae-seop. And even if I don't have respect for certain people, at least I could make the gesture and I can think that way. So we make the effort. And sometimes we leave out the title. Let's say I had a fight with lawmaker Ji Sang-uk. I could say respectable lawmaker Kim, respectable lawmaker Lee, and Mr. Ji. I could say that. Yes, you talked about the details, and this is like a turf war. The words respectable lawmaker were hard to come by, but I learned this in 3 years. The lawmakers are in the National Assembly not because they're all very competent and capable. They represent the people. So when you say respectable lawmaker Kim, it's not that we respect the lawmaker alone. We respect the people that lawmaker represents. So I have no qualms now saying respectable lawmaker so-and-so. Oh, so that's what it means. Respectable so-and-so means respectable people. I hope that you can keep that in mind. It seems that you guys are closer than you think, so let's test how like-minded you are. I'm going to give you keywords. You have to say either A or B. I'm going to give you 2 keywords, and you can answer immediately what you like better. Black bean sauce noodles or spicy noodles? 1, 2, 3. We had 2 and 2. Who liked spicy noodle? Me. So you like to drink, right? Yes, I have tasted all the spicy noodles in Korea. You could go to lunch together after this. Do you pour gravy or do you dip it in the sauce? So everyone said dip it in the sauce. I also said dip it in the sauce. Because fried food, you should not pour gravy over it because it becomes soggy. Okay, thank you. Next question. Fried chicken or marinated chicken? Anyone marinated? Well, fried chicken. I think this has to do with age. Because we're in a similar age group, I think we share this. Well, I am doing this to myself, but I tend to follow your preferences as well. I am trying to share the same agreement with the opposition parties. Okay, moving on. Insider or outsider? We had both insiders and outsiders. As lawmakers, it's better to be insiders, right? Well, lawmaker Kim, you said outsider. I could not drink, and there are so many occasions where you have to go drinking in the National Assembly. So I'm an outsider in that I don't drink. Well, it was a joke. Well, I want to be on the side of the outsider. And looking back on my life, I wasn't so much an insider. Well, the Korean National Assembly has 2 large political parties, and we have smaller political parties, and I felt that my party was an outsider, but we should become more insiders. And I also said outsider. Insider doesn't mean the privileged class. If we could bring the marginalized people into the inner circle, then that would be good for the whole society. So this was a very light question. I think you took it very seriously. And next question. Party's opinion versus my own personal opinion. So which comes first? So lawmaker Kim, you said your own personal opinion. Yes, I do respect the party's opinion. But in forming the party's opinion, I have to speak up my opinion. And I think I owe it to my constituents. Of course, I will be able to coordinate and try to compromise. But up to that point, I stand by my opinion, and I think that is the responsibility of a lawmaker. I stutter when I say something that does not agree with my opinion. When there's a difference between an official position and my opinion, I have to train myself to synchronize my opinion with the party's opinion. So I have a similar stance to what lawmaker Kim said. If there's a difference between the party's opinion and my opinion, I try to reconciliate and try to narrow the gap. Sometimes I have to go with the party's opinion, but frankly speaking, I stand by my opinion, but I try to coordinate. And the Korean politics, I think, is destroyed because party politics could not prosper. People cannot make decisions because everything is unexpected. I chose a certain party thinking that I will benefit from that party's policy, but all the decisions are made, it seems, on an impromptu basis and not very consistent. So we should be able to have more sophisticated party politics. I wanted to say this. I was with Liberty Korea Party, and we established a Bareun Mirai Party, and we said to myself, we shouldn't have the party's dogma because we have to respect the opinions of each and every one of the Korean people. So of the four parties, we are the only party where there is no conflict between the party's opinion and my opinion. Well, you should not advertise your party. Okay, last question. Kim Hyun-woo or Cho Jang-seok? Who do you like better? I heard Cho Jang-seok. Cho Jang-seok should see this. So there may be fans of the actor Cho Jang-seok. So I will just proceed. We are now going to see a short video and then go ahead with a longer talk. I wish they would just do their job. They get paid good money. It just looks like they're in a turf war. Liberals, conservatives, they're all the same. They all seem to have double standards, never admitting they're wrong, always blaming others. Their dialogues never end in an agreement. I was fed up watching the ruling party and the opposition party always fighting and biting. That is why I lost all interest in politics. Politics should not be for the sake of gaining more votes. They should not look after their interest, but the public interest. The least they can do is honor their campaign promise. I hope they can work with integrity and with a heart. Now, let us begin the uphill talk.
네, 영상 보셨듯이 저희가 지금
As you saw in the video, we are going to enter into the uphill talk. talk section of this panel. We will be receiving some questions and comments from the floor. We will give you instructions regarding this. If you go to KakaoTalk, you can add the ID SBSTD, and we will be receiving questions and comments so you can participate in the overall panel session. I will be able to read the questions and comments, and I will deliver your questions and comments through the SBSTD channel. So I once again would like to emphasize that you should be refraining from comments that can lead to partisan arguments. So we first received this question. Even if you're part of one party, within the party you may have different opinions. But how is it that the Conservative Party always comes up with very opposing views from the progressive parties? Lawmaker Kim, would you like to respond? Yes, prior to this talk session, I was very impressed with the presentations that took place earlier. Of course, there are diverse opinions within the nation itself, and even the spectrum of thoughts within our party internally, it's quite diverse. But we are given a certain period of time to do the decision-making regarding policies. So there is a lot of effort that is required to converge our ideas. So even if it takes a longer time, I saw in the survey question that the answer was that people would prefer to do that instead of having confrontation or simply deciding by majority. And I was very impressed with that. I really believe that this should go forward. If it's not decided, we cannot move forward. And I was a bit, let's say, hurt by those types of criticism. But not coming to a conclusion right away does not mean that we are failing. It means that we are working towards creating a more valid consensus. And you may have to criticize us to move into the right direction, but most of all, you, the people, have to give the appropriate time needed to have the right conversations to arrive at the right consensus. So please wait for us a little bit. I don't know if I answered that question. We don't have a lot of time, unfortunately, so I'd like to ask you to speak a little bit briefly. Let's move on to the next question. Lawmaker Pyo Chang-won and Lawmaker Lee, another lawmaker, decided not to run for office next time around. And they have criticized the current National Assembly by saying, you have to change now. What methods would be required to change the National Assembly, do you think? Lawmaker Kim? Yes, I think that there should be more room for frank discussions and conversations within the party as well. Right now, even if we have some differences of views within the party, all outward voices should be standardized. So in those cases, we have to say something that I don't fully agree with, and I have to fight for that opinion. And that will be very difficult for people to, stay in the race for. So I hope that within the parties, we should have more frank discussions in the future.
Okay, the question is about the recent phenomenon of people taking to the streets. So instead of listening to just the extremes, what do you need to do to listen to the moderate opinions more? Lawmaker G? That is what we are pursuing, conservative but moderate conservatism. So we want to stay away from ultra-right or ultra-left. The difference between progressives and conservatives, I think, before ideologies, I think it has to do with identity. Conservatives and progressives are partners. They are not arch rivals. Progressives and liberals are like the spicy noodle and the black bean sauce noodle, because sometimes we can have half and half. And sometimes we have to make the decision of whether to have cold noodles or to have instant noodles. So we have to have diverse menus and let the people choose. That is practical, is it? And that is what moderate conservative is. This question goes to lawmaker Lee Jung-mi. SNS is creating this echo chamber, and it seems like it's distorting the actual reality. If it's a party for the people, you should listen to all the opinions of the people and not just listen to one side. Of the lawmakers, there are some who are addicted to social media. They look at the replies. They're infatuated with the support and passion given to them from their supporters, and this gets more intense. And to the citizens, this was an alternative outlet for the citizens to speak up. But politicians, they should not look at it as the whole truth.
I'd like to ask this question once again to the other lawmakers. Let's say that you are speaking a little bit differently from what the party line is. In those cases, you get a lot of criticism, right? So what is your view on possible solutions to this problem? Well, we don't want to compare with other parties, but one of the main strengths that we have had within our parties is that it's a little bit disorganized, which means that it's a little bit freer to open individual opinions. We're a little bit less authoritarian compared to the other parties. Our respectable lawmaker Lee Jung-mi mentioned this, but in some cases, it is actually helpful for the party if you speak frankly your opinions. When I do this, there are many people who also criticize me, but they say things like, you may be right, but it's better for us to work together as a group. If you believe you're right, if you continue to simply say your voice only, wouldn't it be discrediting the party line? But I don't believe that is the case. I believe that whether it be the current issues of the justice minister's appointment or anything else, I believe my opposing views may have contributed to the overall direction for the future. I'd like to ask lawmaker Kim Hyuna this next question. In some cases, it seems like your party really focuses on your opinions only and not the people's. Is there a channel of communication with the people? Well, there is. We have about 110 lawmakers within our party. We are not simply 110 lawmakers. We are actually representing the voices of the people who have voted for these people. In the beginning, I didn't understand, but these lawmakers are truly saying what was asked of them to be said by the people who voted for them. I think there is a propensity for some people to continuously focus on only one idea. So I think, just as lawmaker Kim Tae-sop said, if we have some opposing views or different views, they have to be within the party. So instead of them leaving the party, they should remain in the party and continue to give diverse thoughts. That's the type of politics, that's the type of party culture that is required. And I will do my best within our party to be that element.
And now to lawmaker G. You're a lawmaker and you represent a certain region, but lawmakers have little dignity. You use profanity, obscene language sometimes. Is there any way to eliminate such indecent language? Well, there are two reasons for using such language. They get emotional, and second, they do it on purpose. The stronger the expression, then the journalists love it. They get a headline. Well, I'm not saying that all the politicians are like that. There are people who can't stand it when their name is not mentioned in the news every day. So they try to find any means possible. So they can even put aside their political philosophies and they use strong language. But if that doesn't make the news, then they use more radical expressions. And they go to extremes. And sometimes people make a comedy out of that. But I think people who use extreme languages, I think they're addicted to the media and they want to be covered in the media. So apologies on their behalf. So in that sense, I think there is something that we need to do on the part of the press. And to lawmaker Lee, another question. You said that the National Assembly is doing their job as long as there are people fighting. So is there any tip? How can we differentiate between the lawmakers who work and who don't work? When I was not part of the National Assembly, I thought that everyone was wasting taxpayers' money. But now that I am inside, no one is lazy. But it's a matter of what are they working for? Who are they working for? The people feel that the National Assembly is not working because 360 lawmakers are immersed in representing the elite class. So that's why the general public cannot relate to the lawmakers. So we have to think about who the lawmakers are working for. And the interview video showed that, everyone's fighting and I lost interest in politics. That's as soon as people become disillusioned with politics, then as Plato said, then that lowers the quality of politics. So it's more important to think about why and for whom we are working.
We have a lot of more questions coming in, but let me ask the next question to lawmaker Kim. One person may have different views. For example, he may be conservative from the security perspective, but for economics, he may be more progressive. You may have different views within one person. In that case, is our current party structure enough to accommodate for these different views? Well, we do segregate quite in a simplified manner by saying progressive and conservative. But the conservative and progressive segmentation that we see in the case of Europe, in the case of the US, and in the case of us in Korea, it's quite different. So right now, it's not ideology that is the most important, but a good party such as ourselves and the respectable parties such as the LKP, we may have some commonalities. But we tend to focus on more progressive values, and that is simply to provide more convenience to the public when they have to make a decision, because we can't go into all of the nitty-gritty details of all of the policies that we want to pursue. So that's just a simplification for convenience perspective. It's not a clear identity segregation. We cannot do so with conservative and progressive only. We have to be much more flexible. So we have to wrap up. Let's just ask this one final question to lawmaker Kim. The term respectable, it seems a little bit not sincere sometimes, but the question is, who do you respect really? Well, I respect these three people. Yes, that seems very sincere, yes. Okay, thank you very much for that sincere answer. So with our four lawmakers, we are having this discussion. Since you will be in office until May of next year, if there's something that throughout the discussions today you have realized that you want to do differently, lawmaker Lee, would you like to start first? Well, in terms of communication, the lawmakers who are in the Conservative Party, I would like to make one good friend in that party. I do have a friend, and I respect lawmaker Lee Sang-don. Even from the Conservative Party, if you have some I felt that I could have some commonalities with that person, and I could really discuss some of the values that I have, and I could share them with that person. So I'd like to create that one good friend in the Conservative Party. What about lawmaker Chi? Do you have any plans like this? Well, this is not anything new, but the reason behind me being involved in politics, whenever I'm asked that questions, what I would always answer is, and it's remained the same since 2016, which is for people who are crying in the dark because they don't have any power, then I want to be able to represent them. And for people who are a little bit well off, I would like them to live with respect for those who don't have that much in our society. And the rule of law should be a single standard that applies to everyone in our country. Those are the criteria I've held as objectives. This is my 4th year. I've tried to maintain these spirits till the end. And even during the National Assembly audits, when we had issues between small and medium-sized companies versus the larger companies, there were many very unfair situations, and I really want to resolve this. And if I have another term, I'll be able to do so. I did give you a warning before. Please refrain from those types of comments. Thank you. It's almost like a rally here. No, I'm just saying that I'm going to continue to pursue these values.
이렇게 지금 초선이었는데
Lawmaker Kim, what do you want to propose to the National Assembly? How do you think it could change for the better? As was mentioned by Lawmaker Kim, within the same party, I think there should be a system to have people speak out different opinions. And I don't rather than changing the system inside the National Assembly, I think the people themselves should change. Whether I am re-elected or if it's my last term, what I consider as my mission is I want to have the healthier people, the younger people. I want them to take interest in politics. I want to act as a I want to play the bridging role, and I want to impress them with how good politics can be. Lawmaker Kim? Yes, I was thinking to myself, and as Lawmaker Lee said, she wants to make a good friend from another party. And before the end of my term, maybe the staff in the lawmaker of another party and my staff, I think we could collaborate together to produce a new bill. Do you have a candidate? Yes, of the 3, I could work with them. Yes, we look forward to that. Thank you to the courageous lawmakers. We have prepared some souvenirs. There are 4. So these are framed quotes. Would you like to choose A, B, C, D? Yes, I'll choose A. Let me get A. What about lawmaker G? I will choose last after all the respectable lawmakers have chosen. Yes, take your pick. I will give you B. Lawmaker Kim. I will choose C for communication. And yes, you get D. So could you show what the code says to the audience? Could you, yes, you could stay seated and just show the quote to everyone. A good National Assemblyman is 1% inspiration and 99% conversation. Talk today. What kind of people are we? Demin, or communicative people. Dialogue. I managed to pull it off every time. So they're all very good quotes. I hope that these quotes can remind you of the panel that we had. Do you like the quotes? Yes, I like it very much. Thank you. So maybe you could go back to your office and hang it in your wall and remind yourselves of your philosophy. Could you take a selfie of you and the frame and hashtag SDF2019 or hashtag respectable lawmaker? Yes, thank you, everyone. So maybe with the frame up, You could deliver your final comments to the audience. Let's start with you, Lawmaker Lee. Communication starts from your heart. So sharing your ideas, even if they're different, you should be open-minded and willing to listen. So if you talk that way, then I think that will make a good lawmaker. And I will do that. Thank you. And Lawmaker G, this is an expression that I use often. People who have different hearts but have different methods, you should give them a hug. But if you have different hearts but use the same method, you should be wary. You should learn to communicate, talk with others, empathize, and reconciliate and harmonize. Thank you.
저는 사람하고 대화할 때
When I talk with others, I tend to look into the eyes because I think the mouth can go in the wrong direction, but you can find the truth within the eyes. Because a lot of our conversations and dialogue happen online, this is happening less and less. I sincerely hope that the Korean society and politics can change, starting from looking at each other in the eyes and identifying the pains, the memories, the experiences that people have through that eye-to-eye connection. I ask all of you to be the ones who start this change, and we will follow. Thank you. Yes, as a member of the ruling party, for people who agree with me or those who have different views, I will continue to have more and more conversations and dialogue with them to represent the overall Korean people better. Thank you. Yes, some people have said that politics is an art of dialogue, conversation, and negotiation. I sincerely hope that Yeouido and the National Assembly will represent conversation, dialogue in the future, and not fighting. Thank you very much, all four lawmakers, for being courageous and being with us today. Thank you very much.
꼭 챙기세요. 다 빼시는 건가? SDF 2019 변화의 시작. 이게 정말 내 생각입니다.
The beginning of change, is that really what you think? We now concluded session 2. Without a break, we will go on with the next chapter, the right to live free from manipulation. Dr. Zeynep Tufekci will be on stage shortly, and I look forward to the next section, and I will see you at 8 o'clock. People who raise the question everyone else had ignored. They hold the technology accountable.
I was a design ethicist at Google because what we don't talk about is a handful of people working at a handful of technology companies, through their choices, will steer what a billion people are thinking today.
네, 안녕하십니까.
Good morning, I am Choi Hae-rim. People believe that the digital world is vast and transparent, but it could actually blur our vision and trap us. Many people are voicing their opinions. We want to take a step further, and we want to heed the strong warning against the possible risk of the business models leading to collective egoism. And after the talk, there will be a Q&A session moderated by Professor Kim Joo-ho. SDD could be added to your Kakao Talk channel, and please enter in your questions. And now, the moment you have all been waiting for, we will meet the speaker through the video first.
네, 반갑습니다. 여러분.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Dr. Zeynep Tufekci. Please welcome her with a big hand.
Hello. So my name is Zeynep Tufekci, and I want to talk about how a combination of business models, how these companies make money, algorithms, what computers can do, and human vulnerabilities have intersected to create a public sphere, a digital public sphere that doesn't really foster healthy conversations. Now, if you've been online, if you go to these platforms, the Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, you realize that a lot of conversations appear to just lead to conflict and tribalization rather than a healthy conversation where people are discussing, deliberating, trying to understand. And that's not a total coincidence. What I would like to do is to try to bring together how that's a function of the design of these platforms. And that design comes from their business model. So let's think about how Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, these platforms, how they make money. Essentially, they're just advertising machines, right? They deliver attention, users' attention, to the advertisers. You go online, you're chatting with your friends, you're seeing stuff, you've got news, but you see ads in the middle. Now, online, ads aren't very effective unless they're tailored and personalized. Let's say they're more effective if they're tailored and personalized. So they also collect a lot of money, a lot of data and information on everyone so that they can sell their ads for more. Okay, so that's the basic business model. Delivering eyeballs, attention, delivering advertisements. The example I want to give is from YouTube's recommendation algorithm. That's my first example. So if you've ever been to YouTube, when you go on the screen, on the right-hand side, there's a sort of this column of recommended videos that play, and that play automatically. It'll just go blink one after another. Now, this is an algorithm that was changed around 2015, and it was replaced by sort of this shiny new algorithm by Google's computer science, machine learning researchers, and they're some of the best in the world. And a lot of the press at the time noted how engagement on YouTube had gone up. And engagement is what Silicon Valley means keeping you on that screen, right? Because they need to keep you on that screen to deliver more ads. That's the business model. And after YouTube changed its recommendation algorithm, the engagement went up, more money for YouTube. So how does the YouTube's recommendation algorithm work? And what are some of the issues that come with it? For my example, I want to talk about something I was researching in 2015 and 2016. One of the things I study is social movements. And in 2016, Donald Trump was a candidate for the United States presidency, but people did not think it was a serious candidacy. They thought, oh, he's just a celebrity candidate. There's no way he can win. The Democrats, one of the political parties in the US, thought it'll be great if he's the nominee. It'll be very easy to beat. The other Republican competitors thought, oh, this is great because we can beat him easily. But that's not the sense I was getting. I was looking at his online footprint, I was following the social media, I was going to his rallies to observe. And I thought, you know what? The historic moment, the political realignment, the way social media works, the way sort of he's hitting some messages, I don't think this is a candidacy that has no chance. It's not just some celebrity that's going to go away. And I write for the New York Times. I wanted to write a column explaining, here's why you should take this candidacy seriously. It's not just sort of some joke or, something to ignore. So to do that, I wanted to quote him. He had something said he had at the rally that I was at. I hadn't really written it down because I was observing. I'd taken some notes. So I went to YouTube and watched that rally that I had been at to get the wording right. And then I watched a few others to make sure that that he'd said similar things or not. I wrote my New York Times column. My argument was, don't ignore this candidacy. Here's the media environment. That's fine. But then my YouTube lost its mind. It just started recommending very different things to me, just because I'd watched a few of those rallies. And what I noticed is that it started recommending from mild to extreme white supremacist, racist stuff. It was autoplaying it. It started autoplaying, I just let it play, sort of like, oh, what's going on? And it started autoplaying things like the Holocaust in World War II never happened. And these extreme stuff, I thought, close the lid. I don't want to see this. What happened? What happened to my YouTube? So I tried this for other political candidates. I watched some Hillary Clinton. She was a candidate then. I watched some Bernie Sanders. He was a candidate. And YouTube would also recommend more extreme stuff to me. I said, maybe this is something to do with politics, you're just getting recommended more extreme things. So I started doing some experiments. And my two favorite examples of how this works are when I just sort of said, all right, let me watch something about being a vegetarian. And YouTube started recommending and autoplaying videos about being vegan, even more strict. I said, okay, let me watch something about jogging, how to start running, how to jog, how to sort of learn maybe a 5K race. And YouTube started recommending autoplaying ultra marathons, not even regular marathons, these crazy ultra marathons. It was just recommending more and more extreme stuff to me. So what's going on here? How is this possible? And what's the downside? So what's possible here is that increasingly in these online platforms, they're using computer science and machine learning, right? Machine learning is the way current artificial intelligence works, which means they're feeding a lot of data into these algorithms, and these algorithms are then personalizing things one by one by one. So if you want people to watch a TV show, right, you can't really completely personalize it. You can have different channels, but there are only so many channels. Whereas on YouTube, you can personalize screen by screen by screen. And if you have a lot of data, you can personalize person by person. So what the algorithm had discovered was that extremer stuff, or edgier stuff, or conspiracies, or things that kind of engage like that, keep people on the site. Especially if you're a young person, it's more interesting. And then you stay on the site, and what happens is YouTube just serves more ads. Now, to be clear, this isn't YouTube's engineers thinking, let's be terrible people. They have the data, they feed it to the algorithm comes up with what to recommend person by person. But what that means is that if you start from here in the middle, you're quite likely to be pulled to one side or the other, right? So in any society, obviously, disagreement can be very healthy. There are things that we should discuss. People do not have to agree. But you also need some mechanisms to bring people to have maybe consensus on some things, or at least a way to resolve their disagreements. But online, they don't have to have a way to resolve anything. They just have to keep you on the site. It's like a meeting designed never to end. And that's no fun, because the more you keep on there, the more they can serve you ads. Now, similar things are true for Facebook's newsfeed. Facebook's newsfeed is there's an algorithm that decides what to show you out of possible 1,000, 2,000 posts you could be seeing. And the algorithm is designed to keep you there as much as possible. Now, once again, the way to do that is to tailor and personalize to human existing tendencies. As people, right? As humans, we are social creatures. We live in groups. We exist with groups. We bond with our people. This is very normal. This is what people do. But the other side of that process, the sociologists would call that in-group. The other side of that process is conflict and out-group. Getting together with people like you, in your in-group, is also how people argue and fight with whoever's the other team. And that whole process we do with civilization, with nation building, with institution building, is try to make sure that our out-group conflict is not violent, is not something that destroys us, because it's dangerous. I mean, the way these social media platforms have set things up, they definitely bring people together by giving us ways to bond with each other over things we like. But then they put us onto almost like a boxing ring that's very entertaining. Because arguing with one another and just watching this or being part of it or cheering your team, it's engaging. It's a normal human tendency. And it's a normal human tendency that's being exploited using our data and using computer science algorithms to personalize, simply to keep us engaged on those sites. So it's not creating something from scratch. It's not creating human tendencies that don't exist. I sometimes liken it to a cafeteria where you're only served ice cream and potato chips for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And before your plate is even clear, here comes the recommended next one, and the next one, and the next one. It's a cafeteria that makes money by keeping you there. And a lot of, especially young people, spend a lot of time there. In fact, after I wrote about the YouTube recommendation algorithm, one of the things that happened was a lot of parents wrote to me, and they told me how they had set their kids in front of the NASA channel on YouTube so that the kid could do his or her homework on the moon landing. And 30 minutes later, the kid would come back, "Mom, the moon landing never happened." You know, the Titanic, it wasn't sunk by an iceberg either. The recommendation algorithms had taken them down the conspiracies. Now, why is that engaging? Again, it's a very simple thing. It's a human tendency to be drawn to the interesting, to the novel. And misinformation, conspiracies, fake news, those things are novel. The real stuff tends to be less interesting. It's less surprising. The more surprising something is, the more you're going to be like, "Oh, let me look at this." And the way these platforms are designed, it's not just the way the algorithms personalize. Most everything about their design is there to keep you on that screen. The way they ping you, the way there is the little dopamine hits, as you would think of them when somebody kind of likes something. Ooh, you feel bonding. But it's also very engaging to watch the fight. Now, when we, in our society, when we sort of have political parties, we have sports, we have competition. These are these out-group processes, right? This is what sociologists would call the out-group processes. We're competing. I'm trying to win. I want my team to win. There's nothing wrong with that. What you need, though, is a mechanism that resolves that competition peacefully. When you have competing political parties, that's the election, right? You compete, you disagree, you have panels, you have debates, then you have a mechanism, that's the election. When you have a sports game, right? You compete, you want to win, you have a score. You have rules, you have referees. There's a mechanism that concludes it to an ending where the parties can say, okay, it was a competition, this team won, this team lost. That's what you get with civilization. We have not at all figured that out for our online spaces, and the big companies have no incentive to figure it out, because that would mean that we would be done. And we could close that screen because there would be a way to resolve whatever was going on. And that's a huge challenge, because they're not doing something very novel, perhaps. You know, TV or newspapers, they also wanted your attention, but they're armed with data and artificial intelligence. And unlike the old traditional public sphere, which was visible to everyone, you don't know what your neighbor is seeing, right? So your neighbor might be seeing something that's getting her very upset and angry, but you don't even know that's there because there's no mechanism to bring people together to counter things. So there might be a lot of healthy things in the new digital public sphere, for sure. It does a lot of good things. It allows people to circumvent censorship. All of that is fine. But it doesn't have that closure, consensus building, decision making, agreeing to disagree but within particular rules, like elections, like games. It doesn't have any of that. So it acts like a centrifugal force. It pushes us into different corners. And those corners are populated with people like us, right? It's our people and it's the other people. And very often, the other side, we encounter them. A lot of people believe that if we only encountered other people's views, things would be better. In fact, there's a lot of concern over what people call the filter bubbles, right? You just hear people like you. But the research shows that's not really what happens online. In fact, Facebook people, or they will tell you, the research shows that we do encounter dissenting or other or counter views, things we disagree with. But we encounter them in a boxing ring set up for us to fight. We don't encounter them in a deliberative setting. So we see the other side, but we're encouraged to dunk on them, to ridicule, or to sort of have a really snappy comeback for our audience, our team. Right? So it's sort of like you're in that boxing ring, and every time you land a good punch, you get the likes and the hearts, and you cheer your own team. And the boxing ring has no 3-minute ring. It's not meant to end. The more you look at it, the more you click on it, the more you participate on it, the better the bottom line of these companies. To fix this would require a top-to-bottom redesign of our digital public sphere. And this is essential, because this is not the first time we've seen technologies, new technologies in mass media, be used in a way that tears people apart. If you look even the history of the United States, some of the earliest movies were very, very racist. And they were used to mobilize the Ku Klux Klan, right? The sort of the white supremacist terrorist group. It was founded again after a movie, The Birth of a Nation, went viral in its day. We have the example of World War II, where propaganda and misinformation and hate speech, all those things we talk about, were integrated with fascist propaganda in Nazi Germany through the medium of films. So after World War II, in the ashes of that conflict, there was a lot of effort and thought that went into how do we design a better public sphere? How do we defang, how do we disarm the power of authoritarian propaganda, the power of hate speech, the power of this conflict and tribalism? And there were a lot of things built, none of which were perfect, but there were a lot of institutions, ways of designing and having ways of mass media operate, from public media to certain rules to different norms, that changed how the public sphere, at least in Europe and US, operated. So we've kind of forgotten that we didn't get what we had before like this. There was major conflict and tribalism and terrible things in the world that in its ashes we learn from. So my plea is that it's not that I'm not aware of the good things, but this time I would like us to take the steps to make this better, not after these centrifugal forces tear the world apart, but before. We should take the warning from the past and realize that every big transition in the public sphere brings its challenges, and we need to address them without waiting for terrible consequences. Thank you.
Thank you for your this.
네, 멋진 강연 잘 들었습니다.
Thank you very much for that wonderful lecture. Now we'll go on to the panel discussion session with our speaker, Zeynep Tufekci, and also Professor Kim Joo-ho. Please welcome Professor Kim Joo-ho back on stage.
안녕하십니까?
Good morning. Once again, my name is Kim Joo from KAIST. During this morning's presentation, I already mentioned that we are working on a technology to increase the level of communication. And I have received a lot of inspiration from your research, actually, so I have participated as moderator. Thank you very much for this opportunity. During your lecture, your speech, you mentioned about how today's social media can be compared to as a boxing ring, and that was quite impressive. How to improve the situation would be very important. So how would we be able to make this sphere more, let's say, friendly, something that we can have more discussions on instead of a boxing ring?
So the first thing I think we need to look at is, why is it a boxing ring? Right? Because it's that business model of trying to keep us on there that's creating this design, right? They're not sitting and thinking, oh, let's make people sort of get in tribes and fight. They're just designing how to keep us there. Now look at how friendly we are. We're sitting in these nice chairs. This is not a boxing ring. We're not going to, because this is set up for us to have a conversation, right? And that's the kind of incentive structure we need to bring to our online spaces and say, what kind of design makes people listen to one another? Not just see the other side, but hear the other side and try to process. And this would be completely different design, I think, than what we have right now. And we have examples from other media, and we have examples from the past. We just have to figure out how to do it now for all the devices that we carry in our pockets.
네, 지금 말씀하신 것처럼 이제 현대에 맞는
Yes, as you said, we have the technological development and we have the advanced machines, and we have to have a better design and that can act an incentive to bring us together. So it should not be a boxing ring. And another presenter talked about how the different ideas should be like the stars at the night sky. So we had an alternative approach. So do you know of any other alternative movements that are happening in the online space? Are there anything that we need to watch out for?
Well, there have been a lot of efforts to try to figure this out. In fact, it's only recently that there's been great attention. Later in the afternoon, another speaker, my friend Ethan Zuckerman, he's going to talk about some of these efforts that we've seen. And every time we look at these efforts, what we see is that they don't have the advertisement finance model at their heart. Advertisement by personalized micro-targeting. As long as you have that, it just doesn't go anywhere, which brings to question, how do we finance this, right? What would be a good model? Because television also has ads, but the television ads are not person by person by person. They go to a broad audience. So maybe one of the things we could do is to make even if the online spaces are going to have ads, they could go to broad audiences rather than person by person. And maybe we could have a business model which is, show me what I want to see, but also help deliberate in a way the conversation concludes rather than continues forever.
네, 말씀하신 것처럼 어떻게 보면 이제 개인의
Yes, so as you said, personalization, customization type of technologies are widely used these days, and that has actually provoked, let's say, a heightening of this boxing ring. So more alternative approaches would be necessary, I agree. During the morning, we presented on the research results that we conducted, and if we look at all of the data and the information, we see that on both extremes, they have louder voices, and it seems like they are more powerful. But what we call the serious observers, these people in the middle, they don't have very strong positions and they don't have a high level of affiliation to a certain group. And if you see these polarized opinions, they seem more extreme, more provocative, something new that people would be interested in. So how can we make sure that the people in the middle, these sincere and serious observers, can have an opening and an outlet for more speech?
So if we continue the metaphor from food, right? If we want to eat healthier, we put healthier food on the menu, we put healthier food on our refrigerator so that even when we're tempted, because being tempted is very human, we have healthier choices. So if you see a crowd of people, these are experiments from social psychology, even if there's one angry person, you're more likely to notice them. That makes perfect sense because that's a threat, right? During your evolution, the Pleistocene, if there was somebody kind of coming at you, you'd be like, you want to know that one because that's going to be important for survival. But that kind of instinct, let's say, or sort of our tendency to notice the extreme, as you say, doesn't help us when we're trying to come together and sort of deliberate. So what you could do is there's nothing stopping us. We could design digital platforms that amplify what you would call the middle. I would pay for an algorithm that said, here is the best representation of a view that disagrees with you. Here's the strongest sort of case against your opinion that's presented well, and let's say amplify that, and you could take the extreme speech and not amplify it as much, because what we're doing is we're taking people's tendency to notice the angry or the extreme side, and we're giving the extreme side a megaphone so that we get more attention. And I'm like, let's take that megaphone and maybe put it someplace else. I'm not talking about censoring people. I'm talking about how we allocate attention.
말씀하신 대로 우리가 이제 주목을 어디에다 하느냐가 굉장히
So it's a matter of what and who to pay attention. So we should take away the megaphone from the extreme voices and try to amplify the voices in the middle and maybe try to emphasize the different opinions from ours, and we could set up the business model, or we could try to have as many options as possible. So thank you. Yes. We are taking questions from the floor. Let me remind you, SBSDD. Enter in SBSDD in your Kakao Talk channel and enter in your questions, and we'll be able to deliver the questions from you to Dr. Tufekci. Yes, we have one question that came from the audience. You talked about the bias in the online platforms, and it's very difficult to just rely on the goodwill of the companies because they're profit seeking. Are there any safety measures, government regulations? No, nothing?
Well, we don't yet have it. And I have to say, this is not the first time we faced a problem like this when chemistry was invented as a science, right? It went from alchemy, not really a science, to chemistry. One of the first things we got, because people could do new things with chemistry, was fake food. They would put lead on cheese to make it look more yellow. And lead is poisonous, right? This is terrible. They would use heavy metals to color food. So a lot of times when you get a new potent technology, the initial uses just to make money, they're not great. And what we had later was first Europe and then US and then everywhere else. It got regulated so that now you can go into a supermarket and buy something and it's not supposed to poison you, which is pretty amazing. There's this whole infrastructure. Same thing with cars, right? They didn't have seatbelts at first. So you can go on and on about other industries. We didn't rely, not only can we not rely on their goodwill, especially when they make money this way, the goodwill part, they could be the angels on earth. It wouldn't be enough. We need new incentives, new business models. We need regulation, consumer awareness, education, all of it, so that we can have a healthier public sphere.
좀 더 이제 건강한
In order to make things more healthy, you made some comparisons to food and even automobiles as well. It's not something that can be resolved by just one side's efforts. We need efforts from the companies, from individuals, from the public, from the institutions and education as well. So it's a comprehensive effort. So it's going to take longer, it's going to be more difficult, but that requires more people's attention and more people's discussion in order to arrive at a solution. We have another question here. With smartphones being in regular use by everyone, it means that everyone has one or more digital platforms. To limit the customization efforts of platform providers, will it be really possible? What do you believe is a realistic approach to regulating this?
I think it's absolutely possible. One of my favorite pictures is from Earth Day in New York, when they first had an environmental sort of protest calling for the Earth Day. And you can't see them because it's so covered in smog and like the air is so unclean that you can barely see them holding the poster. And just 30 years later, most of the big industrial countries have clean air. So at that time, it would have looked impossible. But it wasn't impossible. Like, there are a lot of things. See, what happens is when we solve a problem, like food safety, we forget what a complicated problem it was. You need the cold chain, so many things go into making that food in our supermarket safe. So once it's solved, people go, oh, and you just sort of take it for granted. And the next one looks like unsolvable. And I feel like this one is very solvable. For example, there's no rule that says we have to allow surveillance-based micro-targeting. You could just say, nope, we're not going to allow this. This is no longer possible. And that would be that. These are not unthinkable things. We just need to sort of align the understanding and the political will and say, this isn't healthy. This is how we're going to do it.
분명 이제 알고리즘이 미칠 수 있는 그런 다양한
Yes, algorithm has many downsides, but politically and technologically, we could take some measures, and we need to set the clear direction and think about all the possible impact. And after giving it serious consideration, we should reflect it on our policies. We should never tell ourselves it's too late, it's impossible, because it is possible, and it's never too late. Yes. When you found out the problem with the algorithm, that was a while ago, and a lot of time has passed. Do you think that the problem has gotten more serious? How do you think that has changed?
In that particular example with the YouTube, they tried and took some steps to make it less worse, to some degree. But part of the problem is, even when they make something a little less worse because there's attention on it or somebody like me writes about it, this is a global platform. So it's not enough just to fix the English version that people notice, right? There are many, many countries in the world where they're not necessarily paying that much attention because they don't really have a lot of business there. So even though some things have gotten a little less worse, I feel like as long as they're still trying to keep us on the side as much as possible. It's kind of like, you got this leaking thing and you point at one thing and they just patch it up, but it's leaking everywhere. So you need to kind of change the way your ship works completely, because just, getting attention to this one version and then fixing just that one doesn't solve the underlying structural problem. And it's not because these are evil, terrible people. It's because if you make money this way, that's how it's gonna work.
우리의 이제 그 해결책이 현상에만
Our solutions, if we focus more on just the phenomenon itself, that we should be wary of that. We should be cautious of that. There's a problem. If we try to solve just that problem, then it may incur another problem elsewhere. So we have to look at the structural aspect of overall society. We need a comprehensive view to arrive at a solution, or else it will be just a piecemeal type of a solution. So when you said that actually reality is not that sexy, it's not that new, but that is something that we have to take into consideration and keep in our minds. In a way, I think the fact that individuals should be aware of such algorithms and its limitations and its issues. We should be aware of that. So when I'm looking at a video on YouTube, at least I know that those type of contents does not show the whole picture. That recognition may be a starting point. What do you think, Professor Kim? Yes, I agree, because that self-recognition is very important. Everything that we do with our devices, our use of technology on a day-to-day basis are operated by algorithms. So what I'm looking at or what I'm not looking at, the algorithms are taking note of that. So we have to be more aware. As Dr. Tupechi mentioned, when you looked up vegetarianism and then you went on and on to more extreme cases, what kind of impact algorithms provide to me and what process did everything go through to show this result to me is something that we should be more aware of, cognizant of. And from that perspective, the role of education is very important, especially for our children, for our next generation, how we can provide them with a critical view of what they are looking at and how they're impacted by algorithms. I think that's very important, education.
오늘 투팩치
Yes, Dr. Tufekchi mentioned that there could be alternative social media, but could you give some specific examples?
So, for example, you could have a Facebook or a Twitter that was designed, let's say, without some of the metrics being visible. Right now, you can see how many people liked something, how many people retweeted something, is something popular. And we know if something's popular, more people will be like, ooh, that's so popular, let's go look at it. For example, you could just not show what's popular or not. You could have some more, you could have a time limit. You could have a way in which it said, all right, you can kind of see things for 10 minutes and then this thing is going to be done for the day. You could have an algorithm that says, here's an important but not very sort of sensational thing. You could pair conspiracies with sensible explanations. Now, of course, this is happening in a particular political context. People believe conspiracies if they don't trust the other institutions in society. So while my corner of this research is the digital public sphere, we have to kind of think of how does the whole society operate, because if you have healthy institutions overall, it's easier to fix that. If your other institutions are also failing and people don't trust them, then you don't know what to tell them to look at instead of the, interesting conspiracies. So it's an overall approach that we need.
결국 페이스북 같은 이제 구체적인
So in the case of, for example, a specific platform like Facebook, limiting some functions could be a part of the solution. But of course, the premise should be that on a whole societal level, we need to have trust within our systems, or else whatever the improvements of algorithms or systems we propose, it may be misused or abused or not reap the results that we expected. So a more comprehensive view should be adopted in finding solutions. Thank you very much for that comment. Yes, indeed, in Korea as well, in terms of very negative responses to certain articles have created tragedies in our society, especially for celebrities. I don't know if our solution to that was the right approach, but what is your response to some of the government measures taken to stop those types of comments?
Well, it's a balance, because you don't want, because governments are also interested parties, right? Governments are political parties. They might want to sort of censor certain points of view. I think of it more like, say, medicine, right? You don't want whoever's in power to have the rules. You want to have independent institutions. And you also don't want to sort of, because it's the public sphere, encourage governments to collect the data themselves, because I know that's an issue, or have them because they'll be tempted to censor, and they'll also be tempted to use that data for their own political desires too. So you need to figure out, I think the way we figure out other complicated things is that we build institutions that are accountable maybe to governments, but are not directly controlled by governments. Because, to be honest, everywhere in the world, governments don't always do what's best for the society, because they also want to get reelected or stay in power, and that's a sort of a tricky balance as well.
결국 적절한 규제나 제한이
Yes, good regulations will be helpful in filtering fake news and negative comments and replies, but also we have to have balance, because if we silence everyone's opinions, then the government will get stronger and play the surveillance role, and that could lead to dangerous outcome. So we have, maybe there should be some independent body, or maybe there should be higher people's awareness, and we should take different approaches. Thank you. Yes, as a continuum from the previous questions, every day we are exposed to the algorithms, and we need to be cognizant of how we should not be swayed. Is there any little thing that we can practice in everyday lives? Is there a habit that you can think of?
Of course, individuals' steps are possible. And I want to be clear, I don't mean to say it's bad for people to disagree, right? It's sometimes very healthy to have good disagreement. The important thing is, like, what is the mechanism to go somewhere with it? And one of the things I try to do is, if I find people who seem to make a good case I disagree with, I try to sort of make a note of them. Because the initial response is to be kind of annoyed, because I'm saying something and somebody's kind of effectively disagreeing with me. So my impulse is, I just sort of don't necessarily like that. But I have try to train myself to say, wait, this is important. Like somebody's really disagreeing with me and making a good case. So I try to notice those people and those outlets and go back and look at them later. Because it's very easy for anyone to think they're right. And it's very easy to do this, I'm mad at you, you're mad at me kind of that thing. It's very attractive. So at a personal level, we can say, all right, what is the best case against my own idea? And seek the best version of the disagreement rather than finding a caricature or a weak one and saying, oh, that's nothing, because that's tempting and it's better not to do that.
굉장히 끌리기는 하지만 개인 차원에서 할 수 있는 건
So the things that you can do is, even if you're attracted to a certain content, try to look at the opposing theories and arguments and try to look at what is behind that. I think that's a good solution. I agree. And when I am teaching students in my day-to-day work, I really feel that there's a lack of education related to being cognizant about all of this. There's a lot of investment going in from the private sector and the public sector by the government for AI and other types of high technology. That's a good thing. Yes, I'm thankful for that, and it will actually lead to economic development in the future. However, outside of those investments into high technology, looking at the possible distortions or who will be accountable, who will be responsible, what benefits will be given and to whom. All of that should be transparently shown to the public as well so that we can make the right decision making. And that we should be able to explain how this was done and how we arrived at this conclusion. So I think education is definitely necessary. Yes, I believe that this will be the last question. You mentioned the importance having to listen to the other voices as well, something that I don't like to hear. How can we access it more easily, going against the algorithms?
제가 간단하게
If I may answer,
저는 이제 정말 약간 간단히 생각해 보면
very simply put, they're everywhere. People of different views or differing opinions. For example, your parents will have very different opinions politically versus me. If you look at your parents' phone for 30 minutes, that's a really simple, effective way of trying to view the other opinion. And then you'll be able to realize, oh, my parents live in this world while I live in this world. Or exchanging your phones with your parents. I think that would be a mutually constructive experience. Yes, I think we have been talking about very difficult views until now and difficult issues. Nevertheless, we've had a lot of participation from our participants. And I ask for your kind understanding that we were not able to entertain all of your questions. This concludes the second chapter. We have listened to Dr. Tupechi and Dr. Kim. Thank you very much for your discussions.
Thank you.
네, 자리로 들어가시면 되겠고요. 네, SDF 2019 변화의 시작.
SDF 2019, the beginning of change, and also, is that really what you think? These are the issues that we have been dealing with. Yes, for SDF 2019, beginning of change, is that really what you think? We have listened to Chapter 2, and this concludes the morning session of the forum. It is now lunchtime. There are many events going on outside of the forum venue as well. I hope that you will actively participate in all of the sub-events. From 1:30 this afternoon, we'll go on to the next session, which is co-hosted by the Harvard Nieman Foundation. I sincerely hope that you will stay with us for the rest of the day as well. Thank you very much.
내빈 여러분께 점심시간 관련 잠시 안내 말씀드리겠습니다. 점심시간은 오후 1시 30분까지로 예정되어 있습니다. 점심시간 후에는 SDF2019와 하버드 님원재단의 공동기획 특별 세션 챕터 3 변화의 시작이 진행됩니다. SBS D 포럼 현장에서는 다채로운 이벤트와 체험존이 준비되어 있습니다. 이곳 알림일관 우측에 위치한 국제회의장에서는 같은 생각, 다른 생각 이벤트를 비롯해 하버드 님원재단 세션 연사 카린 벤 캘리파가 만든 VR 체험, 적 프로젝트 등을 직접 체험할 수 있사오니 많은 관심과 참여 부탁드립니다. SDF 2019 변화의 시작, 이게 정말 내 생각일까? 잠시 후 1시 30분에 뵙겠습니다. 고맙습니다.